Why hello everyone, long time no see. Welcome back to another roundup type of video. This is going to be my third and final part of my what have I been playing in 2023 videos. This isn't going to be a game of the year video per se. I know this time of year that's what you expect to see, but that's not what you're getting from me. I'm just going to be telling you about the games I've been playing between October and now, and which one stood out the most to me. If I'm honest, this is going to be a somewhat shorter video for reasons which will become very apparent as I go on. But I definitely didn't get around to playing as many games as I would typically. So first and foremost, I want to start with some games that I've dipped my toe into. So these aren't games that I have fully played through. These are games that I maybe played an hour or two of and I thought, yes, I like these, I'll come back to these at another time. So the first game I want to talk about is Koudelka. So this was a little flutter I had on eBay one afternoon. I saw this and thought, this is a game I know I've always wanted to play. I've heard so much about it. I know this was kind of like the predecessor to Shadow Hearts, and a franchise I've never actually played, but I thought, well, if I'm going to get into a franchise, I like to start at the beginning, even though I don't think there's any canonical continuation involved. But yeah, Koudelka is the weirdest combination of genres ever. It's like a survival horror RP, like real-time RPG. So think Final Fantasy VII crossed with like Alone in the Dark or something like that. It was very peculiar. So I played maybe an hour of this, did a few fights, met a couple of characters, ventured around as Koudelka a little bit, and I thought this is a game I would definitely like to either record or stream. But yes, Koudelka is definitely a game I will absolutely be returning to at some point. It's just not going to be right now. Some other games that I kind of dipped into, I'm just going to grab them here ready to talk about. First one being a much more recent release which has had some very, very good reviews and some positive feedback, and that is Robocop, a game that some people didn't even know was coming. The only reason I know of it is because the people that made this made Terminator Resistance, so I follow them on social media, and of course they, as soon as they announced Robocop, they would mention it like when it's coming out, so on and so forth. So I pre-ordered it and I played about an hour or so, and then I kind of felt guilty because I haven't seen the films. So I thought, you know what, I am going to hang fire and I will play this once I've watched the films, or at least watch the first film. I haven't even seen the remake. Like, that's just how out of the loop with Robocop I am. But what I played, I enjoyed it very much. You can tell it's from the same studio as the Terminator Resistance fellas. It's all first-person perspective. It's all very clean. I definitely got the tone of like this seedy Detroit kind of futuristic shambles. That tone that I know of from the films. I understand that's the concept of the films, and that's very much what I got from this. But yeah, I definitely want to return to this. I liked what I experienced. I was having a lot of fun throwing computers at people. I would like to do more of that, please. So yes, watch this space. There will be some Robocop coming in the future. I also started what is going to be a full playthrough. So earlier this year I uploaded a full blind playthrough of Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. You can find that on a playlist somewhere on my channel. And then I decided which game I was going to do the same with next, and that was Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Now, I'm from a part of the world where you can't really swing a cat without hitting something Agatha Christie related. This year saw it was an anniversary, 70th anniversary of the Mousetrap. So that was a big deal. Like, Agatha Christie's a big deal where I'm from, because it's her birthplace. Yeah. So I generally have affection for Agatha Christie stuff anyway. My parents are into it. It's just one of those things where it's very much been fed into my upbringing. And Murder on the Orient Express, this is actually set in modern times, so we're not looking at 1930s, that Art Deco period. No. It's all actually set in modern day. I've only played an hour or so. I haven't got that far into it. I need more time, so I am going to have to start again. But I can't wait to share this all with you. I think it's going to be a hoot. But it's more of a detective. I mean, clues in the name. You're playing as, Hercule Poirot, and you're doing like examining objects, trying to deduce who suspects might be or might not be. You've got to try and remember information, so when you're putting a profile together for a person, you have to like physically remember aspects of their characteristic that they may have mentioned to you. So it's just got lots of fun, quirky little things like that. But as I say, I haven't got that far into it, so I can't give you a full-fledged review or anything like that. But again, so far what I have played I've enjoyed, and I absolutely will be going back for more. Hi, future editing Vicky here. I have just remembered that there is one game I forgot to talk about, and that was Stray Souls. I streamed this for about an hour or two back in October, and truth be told, that's all I've played of it. And I'm going to be honest, this is probably the one game on my entire list that I won't be in a hurry to get back to. It really is a cheap shot at a Silent Hill clone. I don't feel good saying that. Yeah, all the complaints that other content creators have about Stray Souls, I very much mirror, so I have nothing new to add there. But yeah, unfortunately, I think this is a game that I won't be completing, if ever. I don't know. I mean, you can never say never. I have forced myself through some pretty shady games in my time, and I'm not sure if Stray Souls is going to make the cut. Anyway, back to the main content. And then the final game that I want to talk about, which I did play slightly more of. I didn't get all the way to the end, but I definitely played enough to give you some strong feedback, and that is Ghost Song. This is a game that actually came out in 2022, but it saw its console release this year, so it's kind of a new game, kind of not. And it's, how to say, I hate using the phrase Metroidvania, but I think that's the only terminology I can use to accurately depict to you what type of game this is. So you play as this character here. You don't know who you are, what you're doing, but you've kind of woken up on an alien planet. You've crash landed, or you think you've crash landed there somehow, and you just want to try and navigate your way off the planet, really. And as you muddle your way through, there's various different stages, all with different kind of environments. So some areas are sludgy and slimy and poisonous. Some areas are have got different enemies in, so they kind of like, it's more rocky and crystalline. The general aesthetic is this is a hostile planet and you don't really want to hang around here for too much longer. You meet some NPCs along the way, some humans that I must admit I'm not entirely sure if they're inhabitants of the planet or if they themselves crash landed. I'm pretty sure they crash landed. How long they've been on the planet for, not too sure. But yeah, and then of course you befriend them, and they kind of ask you for favours, like if you can help us get our ship fixed, or at least fix a ship, then we can leave too. So that's kind of the driving force of your character's motivations, getting these supplies together so you can all leave the planet. But yeah, like I say, it's very Metroidvania-ish. You can upgrade your shooty arm. You have like a blaster, kind of like a Mega Man style blaster thing, and you can upgrade that, or you can just equip different types of ammunition to it, which is more practical against some enemies than others. Certain ammunition is needed in order to progress through certain parts of the map, as in, breakable objects, that sort of thing. Yeah. Aesthetically, from a game design perspective, not that I know much about game design, but aesthetically it's got a really nice colour palette. So these purples and blues, are kind of the mainstay, and then they use like reds and yellows to either indicate like hostiles or objects, that sort of thing. Yeah. Also, the music for this game is superb. It's really like trippy, synthy, kind of lo-fi kind of music. It's so well suited to the atmosphere and aesthetic they're trying to create for this game. Like I say, I haven't finished it. I've only done a few bosses, but some of these bosses are tough as nails. It is very much asking the player to really concentrate on, dodging, timing your attacks correctly, which, I think it's easy for someone like myself who doesn't play Metroidvania games that often to forget that is very much an important aspect of the gameplay. Just because it's not a 3D Souls-like type of game doesn't mean to say you don't have to implement the same mechanics and same thought of or path of thought. So yeah, Ghost Song, I really do recommend it. I don't know how cheap this is. I don't know whether or not you can still find this physically or whether or not it would be a download jobby, but I really, really do recommend Ghost Song. Some other games that I decided to play, I haven't got any footage for, but I decided to take a trip down nostalgia lane, and I have been playing some PS3 games. So the first game here on the top of the pile is Alice Madness Returns. This game I played inside and out on the Xbox 360, and I just decided, you know what, I really want to play it again on the PS3. A part of me is also a little bit scared that the PS Store will come to its end in the very near future. And when I say near future, I'm talking maybe 2 to 3 years. I'm not saying I've heard anything that would evidence that, but you've just got to take it with a grain of salt after the initial, we're closing the PS3 and PS Vita store. And it is going to happen one day. And of course, with Alice Madness Returns, you can download the original Alice alongside of it. So my logic was I wanted to install this and get Alice downloaded, and then whilst I was at it I figured I might as well just play the game. I don't know what I can say that people don't already know about this game, but for those who don't know, this is a very much typical of its time platformer, if you could call it a platformer. Yes, I'm going to call it a platformer, but it's also like a hack and slash action-y adventure. It kind of takes all the typical things that people wanted in games at that time, and it's kind of just thrust together in one game. It's not a particularly difficult game if you choose the correct difficulty, but I did cheat. I did download the other dresses that give her perks in battles, so, because I just couldn't be bothered with the stress. So you get your Vorpal Blade as your main attack. Alice also acquires other weapons throughout the game, such as a teapot that you can use as a cannon, a umbrella or parasol. It's more of a parasol that you use as a shield. And what else? There is something else. Oh, there's also the pepper grinder, yes, which you use as kind of like a submachine gun, but it shoots pepper. So it's quirky, it's weird, obviously based on the Lewis Carroll story. Unfortunately, a third game was in the works and it was officially canned this year, EA said to the creator. So even though it's got his name on the box, American McGee, he took his idea to EA and they basically gave him 2 fingers and said, nah, we're not going to do anything with the IP, but we're not going to sell it to you either, and we're not going to do anything. We're just going to make the money from our TV series. Off you go. So which is a real shame, and I think part of that made me want to play this again, because whether or not statistics prove anything, I don't know, but if they can see that people are still downloading DLC for Alice in 2023, maybe that carries some weight. I don't know. But yes, Alice Madness Returns. I played that. Shadows of the Damned, I streamed this last year, so you can check my playthrough on that. There's again another playlist somewhere on the channel. This game is quirky as heck. I decided to play through it because I wanted to try and just platinum it, which actually isn't as easy as it looks. But this is a third person survival shooter type of deal. It's definitely funny as opposed to scary, unlike how I felt about it in the past. I thought it was terrifying. It turns out it really isn't. It's actually hilarious, but it draws so much inspiration from movies like Evil Dead, and then of course it's also got its similarities gameplay wise to newer Resident Evil, well, like Resident Evil 4 and 5, that sort of era of games. So again, it tries very hard to pander to multiple audiences at the same time, and I think in 2010 when it came out, it did that, and it did that well. Nowadays it definitely shows its age. The PS3 copy is definitely not very smooth. I remember the Xbox 360 version being a lot easier to control and navigate, but that could just be my memory. But yes, I decided to go through that once again. And then most recently, you may have caught me on some streams, I have been playing Tomb Raider Legend, one of the 3 games in the Tomb Raider trilogy. This was the Crystal Dynamics soft reboot of the franchise after the Angel of Darkness flop. So all these 3 games do share a story. They remade the first game ever, so Tomb Raider. They remade it into Tomb Raider Anniversary, obviously to celebrate, I think it was its 15th year at that time. I'm trying to think now, 2007, 2008, 99. Oh no, it might have been 10 years of Tomb Raider, beg your pardon. So it was either 15 or 10 years of Tomb Raider. They remade the first one, but then they kind of retconned it so that Underworld fed into a trilogy. But yes, stay tuned here because I will be playing the other games and you'll see what I mean. Tomb Raider Legend definitely didn't age as well as I thought, if I'm perfectly honest. I think the PS3 port is just a very poor port. The controls were dreadful. There were times where I wanted her to jump, she wouldn't have, or she would just jump in one spot, she wouldn't jump in a direction. I would have to get her to dodge roll out of graphics because she just physically wouldn't move out of them. There's just a lot of stuff like that that was getting on my nerves a little bit. But overall, it is a short and sweet game. It doesn't outstay its welcome. You can easily get this game finished in like maybe 3 to 4 hours. You know, if you just do the time trials, you're looking at maybe 2.5 hours just for all the time trials. So yeah, if you like Tomb Raider and you haven't played Tomb Raider Legend, then what are you doing? For the sake of getting either this version, I don't know how easy this is to get, but if it's just a case of downloading it individually, then, you know, I imagine it's cheap enough. What have you got to lose? Yes, Tomb Raider Legend, a very nostalgic spot in my heart. Okay, just leading on to the last couple of games now. So this game also needs very little introduction, and that is the Chant. I unboxed this well over a year ago and never played it because I'm a bad person. But I decided to stream it this year. I think I streamed it during October. It was like my spooky kind of entry for this year. And I really enjoyed this. This is a great, like, I'm not going to call it an indie title, but it's definitely like a B tier kind of game that is trying to achieve some top tier like imagery and storyline, that sort of thing. It definitely aspired to be more than what its budget allowed it to be. I think that's probably the best way I can phrase it. Now the Chant, if you didn't watch me play it, you're wondering what type of game it is another third person survival horror. But it does introduce things that I think more horror games should have, such as crafting. You're thinking, what? Crafting in a survival horror? No, that's ridiculous. Actually, it's brilliant. You have 3 types of weapons, and those weapons in the game are not guns or anything like that. It's like sage sticks and fire sticks and these kind of like new age hippie kind of things. And each weapon or item is more suited against certain enemy types than others. So you would use, I think it was fire against like humanoid enemies, sage against mystic or dimensional enemies, something to that nature anyway. But in order to craft these items, obviously you had to find the items, the consumable ingredients in the world before you could make the item to then use it. So if you went into an area underprepared without having sought after these ingredients first, you could find yourself at a bit of a struggle. Whether or not the difficulty impacted how vastly available those ingredients were, who's to say? But I really enjoyed that aspect of the game. I would like to see more of that in future games. The plot is pretty straightforward, to be honest. The plot follows a girl named Jess, I think. Jess, who had a traumatic experience when she was younger and clearly still struggles with that. Her friend, who also shared that trauma experience, who is trying to find a way to get over it herself, she's decided to take herself to a retreat, like one of these spiritualistic private retreats where they basically meditate the trauma out of you. So she invites Jess along, and Jess kind of in a roundabout sense says yes, but she doesn't really seem on board with the whole idea. I think she's there in the hopes that she can help her friend get over it, and then she'll deal with it herself in another way. I'm not sure. That's what I read from it. Anyway, they get to the island, and of course, it's not a ritualist. It's not a retreat. It's a pyramid scheme whereby the owner's actually trying to summon forth powers from another dimension. So, of course, they perform the aforementioned chant with other people that are residing at the island. And of course, all hell breaks loose. They kind of break the dimensional walls and monsters start pouring out and it all goes to shit. And of course, it's up to Jess, the only one with half a brain, to try and fix the whole situation. That's kind of it in a nutshell. As you can see by the colour palette, we've got like these really cool contrasting pinky reds and blues. That's kind of the palette throughout the entire game, with the maybe everyone's in white. But other than that, the colour palette and the design again looks really, really good. I like the design. Is it polished? Does it look like a AAA game? Of course it doesn't, but not all games need to. And again, music for this game is so cool. I caught a little bit of a behind the scenes snippet with the composer, who said he was trying to invoke a kind of early 70s John Carpenter kind of sound with like these synthesizers and these weird like long drone kind of noises. And do you know what? Yeah, he kind of nails it. I wouldn't necessarily say John Carpenter, but it definitely gave me like Stuart Gordon kind of film vibes. It was giving me like early 80s horror film. It did that very well. So hopefully there's some music playing in the background that you can hear. So the chant, I really do recommend it to any person that claims to be a fan of horror games. It's again one that you can complete in a relatively short amount of time. It wouldn't take days. It just takes me days. And there's also free DLC for this, like completely free, that came out in like late September, early October. And it's like a whole extra level, and it kind of, I know some people have problems with this, but it kind of gives the game a proper ending, which it gives it a bit more clarity, a bit more closure, but also opening up the idea to potentially a sequel, which I love. But it's free, you know, it's not like they released it and wanted $12.99 for it. It's completely free. So with that in mind, I couldn't recommend this game anymore. Now last, and by no means least, and the reason why I haven't really been playing any other games, this has consumed me for the past 2.5 months, and that is Lords of the Fallen. Now I'm glad I've left it this long to talk about this game, because it did have a really rough launch. I won't lie. It let itself down in that first week, and unfortunately I think that was the make or break moment for a lot of people as to whether or not they were going to give this franchise another chance, because this is the second game in a questionable series. I'm glad I stuck it out. I've had a really good time with it. I continue to have a really good time with it, and I'm very much forcing myself through to try and get the platinum. There will be future content about that, I assure you. Now, I'm going to give all my thoughts and feelings based on how the game performs now. I will completely and transparently admit that its performance issues at launch were a little bit inexcusable. Especially with the multiplayer and matchmaking, which for some people isn't an issue because they don't play these games for multiplayer, but there's a lot in this game, if you're going for the platinum, that requires multiplayer. So yeah. However, music, great. World design, I love the world design. It's kind of Lord of the Rings. Oh, it's just so bleak. I don't even know what else to compare it to. There's just a lot of bleakness to it. To say that it's like a Dark or Demon Souls clone feels very inaccurate. There is a lot about this that is so much more, like, I just can't verbalize it. I'm not going to use the word gothic. It's not Gothic. The Gothic period in space and time is not what this is. This predates medieval. This is like Black Age or Dark Ages. I don't know what period of time I can even translate this to, but it's super high fantasy as well. And the idea of the umbral realm, which throws in like all this kind of weird, almost Lovecraftian kind of I suppose Lovecraftian is not even a very accurate word for it, but all these elevated and added aspects really do give it a little bit more edge than what some games like it have tried to do. Speaking as someone that hasn't played at that many Souls-like games, when you really think about all the Souls-like games that exist and how many I've played, the list is actually relatively short, but this one, I don't know, something clicked with me, something about it resonated with me, and I have found enjoyment in it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's the best Souls-like ever and that you should all play it, because that is a very objective opinion. I mean, in my heart of hearts, that's what I want to do. I want everyone to play Lords of the Fallen, but the reality is it's not going to mesh for everybody. The Umbral Lamp edition, so using your Umbral Lamp as a way of like drawing people's souls out so you can attack their soul before it goes back in their body, that's great. I love that. And then you've got like different types of visceral attacks. You've got like standard visceral or the lamp visceral. There's a lot going on in this game. Character customization is a bit rubbish. Do I really feel the need for them to improve it? I mean, games like this, is there really any need in a character customization? I don't think there is, to be honest, but that's just my opinion. So yeah, the reason I have been lost to space and time is because of this game. It's very hard to put into words what draws you to something when you realise there isn't a great deal about it that sets it apart from others, but sometimes it's just the execution, the way that they meld things together. The world layout is great. The map's not too big, it's just the right size. Everything blends together great. When you look out into the cascading mountains, you can see all the areas you want to go to and need to go to. You know, so it ticks all the right boxes in terms of its design. It's just so unfortunate that the launch fell very flat. But there's not much we can do about that now. But yeah, so Lords of the Fallen, if it goes on sale at any point, or if you have been sat on the fence and you're umming and ahhing whether or not it's fixed now, can I play it with my friends? Yes, you can. And I recommend you do so if that's how you feel. So that's all there is to this quarter, to the October, November, December period of my life this year. It hasn't been overly exciting. It hasn't been overwhelmed with games, but I do have a very handsome pile of new games sat over off camera calling my name. So I'm going to try and squeeze as many of those as I can into January, early February, because, you know, once Final Fantasy VII Rebirth lands at end of February, start of March, that's it. I'm probably going to disappear off the face of the earth. So yes, please stay tuned for future videos just like this one. I am going to start scripting things, I think, because I clearly lose track of what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so I am going to link the other videos I made this year, so Q1 and Q2/3. They'll either appear somewhere up on the screen, or I'll just link them in the description below. So yeah, are any of the games I've talked about games that you've also played, games that you've wanted to play, or none of the above? Tell me what you've played. What have you been enjoying over the festive period? I would like to hear. Thank you if you have watched this video all the way to the end. I know I tend to get a little bit tongue-tied and garbled and jumbled, and it stops making sense at about the halfway point, but I just keep on going. Thank you again, and a happy new year to you all. I hope 2024 brings something good for each and every one of you. Yeah, and hopefully it provides me more time to play some games. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next year, or this year, depends when I upload. 2024.